Have you ever sent a message and wished you could take it back the moment you hit send? Now imagine that message went to your CEO. A man known for silence, for discipline, for never smiling. Avery Mitchell never meant for her flirty, late-night text to land in his inbox, but it did. And instead of ignoring it, he responded. Not with anger, not with judgment, but with something even more unexpected. Attention. If you were in her place, would you bury the moment or follow it? Would you protect your pride or risk your heart? This is not a story about falling fast. It is a story about letting someone see you, slowly, quietly, for real. Stay with us, because one accidental message might become the first line of a letter that lasts. It was a Tuesday evening in early spring. The kind of evening when the wind outside your window carries just a hint of the winter that is not ready to leave. Avery Mitchell sat curled on the left side of her worn leather couch, a knitted throw across her legs, and a half-full glass of Cabernet on the table next to her laptop. The lamp in the corner of her living room flickered gently. Soft jazz played low on the speaker. It should have been a quiet night, but her mind was anything but still. Her inbox had crossed the 100 mark again. Deadlines breathed down her neck like cold ghosts. She had spent most of her day on Zoom meetings, defending creative ideas that no one seemed ready for. Her boss, boss, had joined one of the calls unexpectedly and stayed just long enough to make everyone uncomfortable. That was Grayson Wolfe, the CEO, the man who rarely appeared in meetings unless there was money, crisis, or both involved. And he had watched her, not commented, not even blinked, just watched. Avery had felt the tension gather in her shoulders, had heard the sudden stiffness in her own voice. After the meeting ended, her friend Emma had messaged Girl, "Why does he always look like he is calculating your life insurance policy?" She had laughed at that, but a part of her wondered. Avery had only met Grayson Wolfe a few times in person. Tall, restrained, always in dark suits, even when everyone else wore jeans. There was something about him that was both magnetic and intimidating. Not loud, just still. Still in a way that made you wonder what he was trying not to feel. And now, at 9:12 p.m., slightly wine-tipsy and emotionally exhausted, Avery picked up her phone and opened her chat with Emma. She typed quickly, without thinking, without checking, without breathing. "I swear if Grayson Wolfe keeps staring at me like that in meetings, I might do something reckless. Like ask him if he stares that hard in bed too." Then she added a laughing emoji and a fire emoji just for fun. She hit send. Immediately after, she froze. The name at the top of the chat was not Emma. It was Grayson Wolfe. Her blood turned cold. No, no, no. This cannot be happening. Avery stared at the screen, willing time to reverse, willing the message to unsend, willing the earth to open up and swallow her whole. But none of that happened. The message sat there, delivered, read. 3 dots appeared for a second, then disappeared. "Oh my God," she whispered into her empty apartment. "I am going to die. I have just sexted my CEO. I am going to be fired, sued." Put in a LinkedIn horror story thread. She stood up, sat back down, picked up the wine glass, put it back, checked her phone again, still no reply. Had he screenshot it? Had he forwarded it to HR? Was he laughing in some private chat room filled with elite executives? The minutes stretched long. Her chest felt tight. She closed her eyes, ran both hands through her hair, and let out a breath that sounded more like a prayer. Then her phone vibrated. A new message from Grayson Wolfe. She stared at the screen for 5 seconds, before daring to open it. Noted. That was it. One word. Noted. She stared at the reply. Was it sarcasm? Disgust humor? A warning? She had no idea. Another message arrived. Would you like me to stop staring? Avery. Her breath caught in her throat. So he had been staring. And he noticed she noticed. She wanted to throw her phone out the window, and then follow it. But at the same time, there was something else. A flicker, small, impossible to ignore. That night, she did not sleep much. The wind outside grew louder, but inside, everything had gone suddenly quiet. The next morning, Austin greeted Avery Mitchell with soft rain and the low hum of thunder in the distance. She sat at the kitchen table, still in her robe, staring into her mug of coffee like it held the answers she was too afraid to ask. The screen of her phone lay black beside her, silent, no new messages. Just the two she had received the night before, noted, and, would you like me to stop staring? Avery. Those words had not left her mind since they appeared. They hovered in her chest like a question she could not shake off. Part of her wanted to believe it was just dry humor, a CEO's way of brushing off an awkward situation. But there was something in the way he wrote her name. Calm, precise, almost personal. She tried to shake it off, focus on work, deadlines, presentations, but her mind kept drifting back to him. Grayson Wolfe. The first time she met him in person was almost a year ago. It had been at a quarterly board review in Dallas. She had flown in with the creative team to pitch a rebranding campaign. He walked in 10 minutes late, wearing a navy suit, no tie, not rushed, not apologetic, just quiet, eyes sharp like winter glass. He sat at the end of the table, listening. He did not interrupt, he did not react, until she finished, and then he simply said, "No, it is off-brand, too sentimental, no explanation, no feedback." Just those words, his voice deep and steady, no warmth, no cruelty either, just final. Avery remembered walking out of that room, feeling like someone had dropped a stone in her chest, not because she wanted his approval, but because she had never met someone so completely closed off, like his soul had a gate, and the lock was triple sealed. In the months after, their paths crossed only through virtual meetings, emails, occasional executive reviews. He was always the same, professional, controlled, barely human. People called him the ice chair, a play on chairman of the board and his frostbite-level energy. She had joined in those jokes sometimes, lightly, quietly, but deep down, Avery had always been curious. What makes a man build that kind of wall, not just emotional distance, but a deliberate, constructed silence, the kind that keeps even his own breath in check? Now, after that text, she wondered if there was something behind the ice. She opened her laptop, scrolled through her calendar, and saw a note. Tomorrow morning, leadership retreat, location, Hill Country Springs Resort. Half of the top-level team would be going, including Grayson. She had almost forgotten. Just her luck, sharing airspace with the man she accidentally flirted with. She closed the laptop, sat back, let her thoughts wander. Why had she sent that message? Not the practical reason. She had meant to message Emma. That much was clear. But deeper than that, why that message? Why that feeling? She thought about the way Grayson watched her in meetings. Not obviously, not creepily, but attentively. His eyes would fix on her, not when she spoke, but when she listened, when she paused, when she argued for something with quiet fire. Avery had spent years learning how to keep her feelings tucked beneath layers of grace. She was warm, but measured. She knew how to read a room, how to read a silence. And there was something in his silence that had always felt aware. Last night, S message had peeled something open in her, not just a mistake, but a mirror. It showed her a part of herself she did not want to admit still existed, the part that longed to be seen, even by someone who made it hard to look. She poured more coffee. The rain outside was steady now. Birds huddled on the edge of the fence. Somewhere, a neighbor's wind chime played faintly. She picked up her phone again. Still no message, just those two words. "Would you like me to stop staring?" Avery smiled softly, then shook her head. She whispered to the empty room, "I do not even know what I want him to do." The next morning, Avery stood in front of her closet, trying to decide whether the black blazer or the soft beige one would make her look more emotionally stable. Neither felt right. She sighed, reached for a deep forest green jacket instead, and tossed her essentials into a canvas weekender bag. The retreat was not optional, and it was not a vacation. It was business. 2 nights, a resort, tucked deep in Texas Hill Country, team bonding, vision planning, buzzwords wrapped in hors d'oeuvres. She tried not to think about who else would be there. By noon, she was at Austin Bergstrom International Airport, checking her gate while sipping from a paper cup of tea that had gone lukewarm. She kept her head low, wore her sunglasses even indoors, just in case. But fate had its own timing. At Gate 4C, standing near the window and reading something on his phone, was Grayson Wolfe. Of course, he was dressed casually, but even in dark jeans and a slate gray sweater, he looked like a man built from stillness, every movement measured, every breath intentional. He noticed her within seconds. His eyes lifted, met hers. No reaction, no surprise, just acknowledgement. She gave a slight nod. He returned it, and then looked away. Her heart should have slowed. It did not. 30 minutes later, the loudspeaker crackled. "Attention passengers. Due to wildfires affecting regional air traffic, all flights to Fredericksburg and surrounding areas have been temporarily suspended." Groans rose around her. People stood up, made calls, rolled their eyes. Grayson remained where he was, unmoving. She tried not to glance his way, but 10 minutes later, she heard his voice. "Mitchell." She turned. He stood a few feet away, his expression calm but direct. "It is likely we will not fly today. I will find another way there." She blinked. "You mean drive?" "Yes. That is a 3-hour drive." He tilted his head slightly. "I am aware." There was a long pause. Then he added, "Would you prefer to wait overnight at the airport?" She looked around. The seats were filling. A toddler was already crying, somewhere in the distance. The air smelled like pretzels and frustration. "No," she said finally. "I will come with you." The rental car was waiting by the curb. It was not a luxury SUV or a Blacktown car like she expected. It was a dusty blue pickup truck. Older, clean, but clearly driven. She raised an eyebrow. "It belongs to my uncle," he said, opening the passenger door for her. "He lives nearby." She climbed in. The seat was warm from the sun. The dashboard had a faint crack near the air vent. Country radio was playing softly, as if left on from the last driver. As they pulled out of the airport, the city gave way to winding roads and open sky. For the first half hour, they said nothing. She stared at the fields. He kept both hands on the wheel. Occasionally, the wind picked up and brushed dust across the windshield. Then, somewhere between Marble Falls and Johnson City, he spoke. "You are quieter than usual." She looked at him. I usually do not text my boss inappropriate messages and then share a vehicle with him for 3 hours. His jaw twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. I do not think it was inappropriate, he said calmly. She turned toward him. You do not, he glanced her way briefly. It was honest, maybe unintentionally so, but still honest. She did not know what to say to that. So she turned back to the window. Another 20 minutes passed. The road began to curve through low hills. Wildflowers in early bloom lined the edges of the highway like quiet confetti. The sky stretched wide, pale and moody. Then came the sound, a light sputter, then another. The engine coughed, once, twice, then died. Grayson pulled over calmly. No panic, no sigh. Just turned the key again. Nothing. Avery stared. You have got to be kidding. I am not, he said. He stepped out, walked to the front, lifted the hood. She followed. The air smelled like cedar and distant smoke. Well, she asked. I do not know much about engines, he replied. She blinked. You are a billionaire, and you drive your Uncle S truck with no clue how to fix it. I can build a server farm blindfolded. But I have never needed to change oil. She looked at him for a moment, then started to laugh. It was a sudden sound, a true one. He glanced at her. That unreadable face almost changed. Almost. A beat later, she said. So what now? There is a town 10 minutes back. We passed a diner and a motel. Are we walking? There is no signal here. We will have to. She looked down at her boots, then up at the sky. Well, perfect. Just the day I decide to wear heels. They left the truck behind, walked the shoulder of the road in silence. Her bag bounced awkwardly against her side. The sun had started its slow descent. As they walked, she found herself glancing at him, not because he was handsome, she had known that already, but because he seemed human. Not the statue in a suit from boardrooms, just a man, walking beside her, in silence. When they finally reached the motel, the clerk behind the desk looked apologetic. We have one room left. King bed, no rollaway. Grayson looked at Avery. She crossed her arms. I will take the floor, he said. She lifted a brow. No dramatic offer to let me have the bed I do not make, offers I will not follow through on. Something in his voice made her heart pause. She nodded. Fine, one room, but you better not snore. That night, the motel room smelled like air freshener and wood paneling. She sat on the edge of the bed. He worked silently on his laptop from the corner chair. And somewhere in the quiet hum of the heater, Avery Mitchell began to realize this was not going to be the kind of story she could forget. The motel room was smaller than it looked from the outside. There was a small round table under a humming ceiling fan, a dresser that had seen better decades, one king-size bed in the center, a green quilt tucked tight, 2 pillows. Grayson took off his shoes and jacket. He folded them neatly on the chair. Then he sat down beside his laptop, as if he had been born in that exact posture. Still, focused, eyes on the screen, Avery stood by the window, arms crossed. The sun was gone now. The sky outside was blue-gray, and the parking lot below glowed under tired street lamps. She exhaled. So, she said, this is not how I pictured my leadership retreat. Grayson did not look up. I was not expecting mechanical failure either. She eyed the remote on the nightstand, reached for it. The screen blinked to life. She scrolled, paused at a romantic comedy she knew by heart. Then, just as she was about to click play, his voice interrupted. I prefer news at night. She turned. Seriously, after the day we had, you want market reports and political panels? They help me sleep. That is depressing. He glanced at her. Your choice of entertainment includes unrealistic expectations and canned laughter. She smiled. Exactly. Comfort. They stared at each other for a moment. Then she pressed play. Soft music filled the room. A couple on screen argued in a flower shop. Grayson said nothing, but he did not stop her. 10 minutes later, he closed his laptop and watched, not the movie, but the way her face softened during the funny parts, the way she leaned slightly toward the screen when the main character confessed her love. He studied her like someone reads a language they are just beginning to understand. The movie ended late. Avery turned off the screen, set the remote down, and stood. I need to wash up, she said. Try not to steal the blanket while I am gone. He nodded. In the bathroom, she stared at her reflection, hair slightly windblown, eyes tired, but more alive than she remembered. She changed into a loose cotton shirt and soft joggers. When she stepped back out, Grayson was already lying on the floor. He had taken a spare blanket from the closet and folded it twice. No pillow, just his arm beneath his head. She paused. You do not have to do that, you know. He looked up. You need sleep. The bed helps. She walked over, stood above him for a beat, then whispered, Thank you. He nodded once. The room went quiet again, except it was not empty. It held something, like two people sharing a secret they had not yet spoken aloud. In the morning, Avery woke to the smell of coffee. She blinked. The sunlight streamed through the thin curtains, cutting golden lines across the carpet. She sat up. The bed was still warm where she had been. She looked over to the table. Grayson was pouring coffee into 2 ceramic mugs. He wore a soft navy t-shirt and looked human, more so than ever. He glanced at her. I walked to the diner while you were still asleep. They opened at 6. She rubbed her eyes. You got me coffee. You take it with 1 sugar, no cream. She stared. I remembered from the office. He added simply, one of the meetings last year. She took the mug, held it between her hands. It was too warm, and just right. Thank you, she said. He poured some for himself, sat down, sipped. They stayed like that, drinking quietly, no rush. Avery felt a calm settle over her, something slow, something kind. After a few minutes, she asked, Do you ever just sit? He raised a brow. What do you mean like this? Without a meeting or an agenda? Just sit? He thought for a moment. Not often. She nodded. You should. He looked at her, then said softly, Maybe I will, sometimes. Avery smiled, not at him, but to herself. The heater hummed again. The light changed on the floor. Something inside her shifted. Not much, but enough. She stood, picked up her bag, began to fold the blanket. Grayson watched her. As she moved across the room, he noticed how she carried herself. Not with pride, but with intention, every step thoughtful, not hesitant, just aware. She glanced at him once and said, Well, let us go face the retreat. He stood, picked up his laptop. Are you ready for the questions? She smirked. What questions? The ones about why we showed up together. Avery paused. Let them ask. He looked at her for a long second, then gave the smallest nod. Outside, the day was bright, but not warmer than what had just begun inside that quiet motel room. They arrived at Hill Country Springs Resort just after 9. The road to the entrance curved gently between tall oaks and clusters of bluebonnets in early bloom. The building itself stood quiet, dignified, all wood and stone and wide glass windows that let the morning light spill in. Avery stepped out of the truck first, Her boots touched gravel. She stretched her neck, tried to loosen the tension in her shoulders. Grayson rounded the back, lifted her bag like it weighed nothing. She gave him a look. I can carry my own. He handed it to her without a word. Inside, the air smelled like cedar and something sweet. Maybe honey, maybe pine. The front desk handed them welcome packets, name tags, itinerary folders. The woman behind the counter said cheerfully, "Your rooms are just across the courtyard. Separate cabins, number 12 and 13, next to the creek." Avery exhaled, relieved. Grayson only nodded. For the next few hours, the day moved on as if nothing had changed. They joined a strategy session in the main lodge, sat 2 seats apart, spoke only when needed. Other executives joined them. Laughter, coffee, PowerPoints, but Avery felt it. A thread running under the room, quiet but strong, like a current just below the floor. After the meeting, she returned to her cabin. It was small, peaceful. A window above the bed showed tree branches swaying in afternoon light. She sat by the window, took off her boots, let her mind breathe, but it did not rest. Her thoughts circled back to the truck, the walk, the room, the coffee, the movie, and him, Grayson Wolfe, silent, measured, but not untouched. Something had changed, not just in him, but in her. That evening, the team gathered around a fire pit behind the lodge. Warm lights strung across trees, drinks, small bites, casual dress, music low. Avery stood near the edge, cradling a cider in both hands. She saw him across the fire, alone, watching, not withdrawn, but apart. After a while, she walked over. He looked up. "You escaped the group games," she said. "I did. They were playing charades. Even more reason." She smiled. "Can I join your exile?" He shifted slightly. I did not say no. They stood there for a while, listening to the crackle of firewood, the occasional cheer from the crowd behind them. Then he said, "Do you like silence?" She thought a moment. "Sometimes, when it feels safe." He nodded, then, after a long pause, added, "To me, silence used to be peace." She turned toward him. His profile was sharp against the firelight. He continued, "Now it is mostly a habit. Something I wear." She said nothing. Let him speak if he wanted. Let the air stay soft if he did not. But he did. "My brother S.'s name was Adam." The words came so simply, so quietly, as if he had never said them out loud before. He was younger, brighter. People liked him immediately. I was always background. Avery listened. He died 6 years ago. Car accident. He was driving back from a night class. It was raining. He paused. They said it was fast, that he likely did not feel it, but that never helped. His hands were still in his pockets, but his voice, it wavered slightly. I had just started Wolf Systems. Everything was pressure. Funding rounds, deadlines. I missed 3 calls from him that week. The last voicemail was short. He wanted lunch. Said he had something to tell me. Grayson looked into the fire now. I never called back. The silence around them deepened. Avery's throat felt tight. He continued, "After the funeral, I started closing, not just to people, but to sound, emotion. I stopped letting things in. It felt safer, more efficient." He exhaled, but after a while, you forget how to open the door. She reached over, placed her fingers gently on his forearm, not grabbing, not pulling, just present. "You are not the only one who has tried that," she said softly. He looked at her then, really looked, and said, "But you still smile, still laugh." "I do. she whispered, but not because I forget pain. I just learned that pain can live beside joy, and both have their place. They stood like that for a long time. No more stories, no more explanations, just a man who had carried too much, and a woman willing to carry a little of it with him. Later that night, back in her cabin, Avery sat in the dark with the window open. The wind whispered through the trees. She touched her phone, thought of texting him, then chose not to. Some silences were sacred. And some stories needed space. The air in Austin felt different when Avery returned. Maybe it was the humidity, or the sudden return of city noise, or maybe it was the quiet shift in her own chest. Something had settled during those days at the retreat, and now something else was unsettled again. Monday morning came quickly. Her alarm rang at 6. She dressed in navy, a sharp blazer, clean slacks, the kind of outfit that said, "I am fine," the kind that did not invite questions. At the Crosspoint building downtown, the lobby buzzed with energy. She walked through glass doors, swiped her badge, nodded to familiar faces. But something had changed. Not just in her. She could feel it in the way people looked at her. Just slightly too long, or smiled in a way that hinted at curiosity they did not say aloud. By the time she reached the elevator, she had heard it already. So she came back with him. They were on the same flight. I think... No. They drove. I heard it from reception. Avery kept her face still. The elevator opened on the 12th floor. She stepped out, walked straight to her office, closed the door behind her with more force than necessary. Her desk was exactly as she left it. Neat, centered, controlled. She sat down, opened her laptop, 10 emails, 3 meeting invites, and 1 message. From Grayson Wolf subject, creative direction, check-in time, 8:01 a.m. Mitchell, can you join me on the 32nd floor at 10? I want to go over the Q3 proposals. That was all. No good morning. No thank you for the conversation by the fire. No, I have not stopped thinking about what you said. Just business. Like nothing happened. Like nothing had ever happened. Avery stared at the screen. The knot in her stomach tightened. She read the message again, then closed the tab. By 10, she had rehearsed a dozen versions of what she might say. Maybe she would play it cool. Maybe she would mention the retreat. Or joke. Or ignore it altogether. But when the elevator doors opened to the top floor, all that preparation vanished. The executive floor was glass and metal and silence. She walked down the hall. Grayson S.'s office door was open. He was standing near the window. Suit, tie, back to her. She knocked once. He turned, gestured to the chair across from his desk. Thank you for coming. His voice was neutral, smooth, professional. She sat down, crossed her legs. He opened a folder, began reviewing slides. Slide 6 should be adjusted. The visual hierarchy is off. Also, the campaign headline could be stronger. It needs emotional clarity without sounding sentimental. She blinked. Right, she said softly. Do you disagree? No, she answered. I thought maybe we would talk about the retreat. He looked at her. For the first time that morning, their eyes met. Then he said, if there is something specific you want to address, you are welcome to bring it up. Avery felt her chest tighten again. He was giving her a choice, but not an invitation. She looked down at the folder. No, she said, after a pause. It is fine. He nodded. Moved to the next slide. 15 minutes passed. By the end, she stood up, smoothed her blazer. He walked her to the door, paused, then said, Thank you. Mitchell, you continue to impress. It should have been a compliment. but it landed like a closing door. She nodded. "Have a good day, Mr. Wolf." Back in her office, she sat in silence. The walls felt closer, the air heavier. Outside her window, the traffic crawled like it always did. Nothing had changed. But inside, everything had. She picked up her phone, considered texting him, then placed it back down. Instead, she whispered to herself, "So that was just a moment, not a beginning." And somehow, that hurt more than she expected. By Thursday afternoon, Avery had started to convince herself that nothing had changed. The days passed in a quiet rhythm of emails, project briefs, and polite hallway nods. Grayson remained distant, perfectly professional, and she matched his energy, or at least pretended to. She worked late, came in early, answered messages before sunrise. On the outside, she was the same Avery Mitchell who had risen through the ranks by sheer talent and calm resolve. But something inside her had dulled, like a light, dimmed to protect itself from burning out. It was just after 5 when a soft knock came at her door. She looked up. Sarah, the front desk coordinator, stood there holding a white envelope. No name, but it says it S for you, Sarah said. Avery frowned, took it gently. The paper was thick, heavier than standard, smooth, the kind you do not buy in a rush. There was no sender address, no logo, just her full name, handwritten in elegant script across the front. Inside was a single, folded card. The handwriting was the same, careful, measured. "Mitchell, you are invited to the Wolf Systems Spring Gala, Saturday, 7 to 0 p.m. at the Atrium. Formal, attendance encouraged. G.W." That was all. No date on the card, though she knew when the gala was. No RSVP, no emojis, no overthought phrasing, just that. She read it again, then again, and for the first time that week, she smiled. It was not an apology, not a confession, but it was something. Something only he would do. Grayson Wolf did not send texts at midnight. He did not stand in doorways with roses. He did not ask how you were feeling, or say he missed you, but he did send paper. Real paper. With her name spelled correctly in handwriting that tried not to shake. It was, in his own way, a knock, a soft one. Later that night, she sat on her couch, the envelope still in her hand. She called Emma. "He sent you a..." "What?" Emma gasped. "Wait. Like handwritten." "Yes. With ink, real pen, real envelope. That is basically a love letter for a man like him." Avery laughed. A real one. "The first since the retreat. I do not know what it is," she said. "But it is something." Emma paused, then said, "So are you going?" Avery looked out her window. The city lights blinked softly across the skyline. She thought about the card, the quiet message inside it, the tone, the care it took to write it. "Yes," she whispered, "I think I am." On Saturday afternoon, she stood in front of her mirror for too long. Her closet was neat, intentional. Most of her dresses were classic, structured, neutral. But in the back, there was one she'd never worn. Deep burgundy, smooth silk, open-backed, but tasteful. A little softer than her usual edge. She put it on, and when she looked at herself, she did not see the woman who had sat quietly across from a man, pretending not to feel. She saw the woman who had walked beside him on a dark road, who had listened to his silence, and lived her own. At 6:45, she stepped into a car and headed to the Atrium. It was a modern building downtown. Glass walls, hanging lights, a long tree-lined entrance that made everything feel more intentional, more elegant. Inside, people mingled with drinks, Laughter bubbled at corners of the room. Soft jazz played from a quartet on a raised platform. Avery walked slowly. She felt eyes, not because she wanted them, but because something had changed in her stride, more grounded, more sure. And then she saw him, across the room, in a black suit, no tie. His eyes found hers almost instantly, and for a second he paused, like the air caught in his lungs. Then he moved. Avery had never seen Grayson walk through a crowd like that before. Not quickly, not stiffly, just directly. His focus was clear, and it was on her. When he reached her, he did not say anything right away. He looked at her dress, her hair, her eyes. Then he nodded slightly, like an unspoken thank you. "You came," he said. "You invited me." He tilted his head. "That is not always the same thing." She smiled. "But I am here." They stood there a moment longer. The gala swirled around them, voices, clinking glasses, soft music, but neither of them moved. Then he said, "Come with me, just for a few minutes." She hesitated. But something in his tone felt different. Not commanding, not distant, just real. She followed. He led her through a quiet side hall, past the catering corridor, and up a narrow staircase that opened to the rooftop. The air outside was crisp. The city lights shimmered below. A string of lanterns swayed gently in the wind, casting warm glows over the concrete. They stepped out together. Avery looked around. "You planned this, no?" he said. "I just hoped." She leaned against the railing, arms folded. The breeze played with a strand of her hair. He stood beside her, hands in his pockets. After a moment, she said, "You have been quiet. Since the retreat, I have. You invited me here tonight, sent me a note. But all week, you were gone." He nodded, looked out toward the skyline. "It is hard to change what you have always relied on." She did not interrupt. He continued, "For years, silence protected me. It gave me control, distance, predictability. But after that night by the fire, I realized it also cost me things I did not even know I missed." She turned to face him. "What did it cost you?" He looked at her now. "You." Her breath caught, just slightly. He added, "Not just as a colleague, or someone I admire, but as a person, I wanted to know. For real." Avery stayed still. Her eyes searched his. "You do not talk like this." "I know." "Why now?" He took a breath, looked down at his hands. "Because I do not want this to be another voicemail I ignore, another lunch I postpone." He met her gaze again. "I want to try, but I am not good at it. Not like you." She laughed softly. "You think I am good at this? You are better than I am?" She looked at him closely. "You terrify people. Grayson, you shut down ideas. You walk into rooms and everyone holds their breath. I know. But I never feared you," she added. "Not really. I just wanted to understand you." The wind brushed past again. He stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough. "Can I ask something you said?" She nodded. "That text," he said slowly. "Was it just a joke? Something you sent without meaning?" She bit her lip, then smiled. "Part joke, part wine, part truth. I was not ready to admit." He exhaled. Then, voice low, he asked, and now she looked at him. Now, she saw not the CEO, not the decision-maker, but the man who had driven her through the hill country, the man who drank diner coffee at dawn, the man who had kept her warm when the room was cold, even in silence. "Now," she said gently, "I am still figuring it out, but I do not regret it." His shoulders relaxed, just slightly. Then he said, "I do not either." They stood in quiet for a moment. The city pulsed below them, slow, alive. Grayson turned toward her again, his voice steadier now. "You once told me that pain and joy can live side by side, that both deserve a place." I did. I never forgot it. She smiled. He added, "So, will you let me try to learn that with you?" Avery reached up, brushed a hair from her cheek, then said, "Only if you agree to watch another romantic comedy sometime." He raised an eyebrow. "Even if I hate it, especially if you hate it." A pause. Then the corner of his mouth turned up, a real smile, not forced, not polite, just warm. They stood side by side, looking over the lights of Austin, as the rooftop lanterns flickered gently above them. No kiss. No grand ending. Just two people choosing to stay. The next morning, Avery woke up before the sun. The sky outside her bedroom window was still dark. The city barely a whisper. She sat at the edge of her bed, her hands curled around a warm mug of coffee, watching the quiet before the world moved. She had not slept much. Her conversation with Grayson replayed in her mind like a quiet song, not loud, but steady. The words, the pauses, the things they had not said out loud, but still heard anyway. She had never felt more uncertain, and never more sure. At the same time, there was comfort in his honesty, but also fear. Fear of what this meant, not just for them, but for her. At work that Monday, the world moved like normal again. Meetings, emails, budget notes, press releases. But something inside Avery kept hesitating, not because she regretted anything, but because she had never allowed herself to feel this seen, not at work, not in this way. By mid-afternoon, she found herself sitting in the empty office break room, stirring sugar into her coffee she did not plan to drink. Sarah walked in, paused at the door, and smiled. "Are you okay?" Avery looked up. "Yes. No. I do not know." Sarah sat down across from her. "I saw you two on the rooftop. After the gala." Avery raised an eyebrow. "You spying on me now?" Sarah laughed. "No, but you two were not exactly invisible." She stirred her tea, then said gently, "Do you like him?" Avery did not answer for a while. Then she whispered, "Yes, and I do not know what to do with that." Sarah nodded. "You do not have to know everything right now. But I am afraid of what." Avery looked at the window. The blinds were half closed. The light filtered in like soft lines across the tile. "I am afraid he will retreat again," she said. "I am afraid I will fall first. I am afraid it will cost me everything I have built here." Sarah leaned in. "Or," she said, "it might give you something you never thought you were allowed to have." Avery looked at her, then smiled. "I hate when you are wise." Sarah grinned. "It is a burden." Later that day, just before 5, Avery walked down the hallway to the executive floor. She did not knock, she just opened the door and stepped in. Grayson was at his desk, typing. He looked up. No surprise, no alarm, just calm recognition. "Mitchell, I need to ask you something," she said. He stood slowly. "Go on." She took a breath. "This thing between us, it is not an idea, or a maybe, or a someday." He nodded. "And I need to know," she said, "if you are ready to risk something real." He did not answer right away. Instead, he walked around his desk, stopped a few feet from her, then said, "Yes." She blinked. Just like that. "Yes. I mean, you did not even pause." "I have been pausing for years," he said. "I am done waiting for the perfect conditions. I am not perfect. I do not want perfect. I have fears. So do I. They stood there. No crowd, no music, no retreat to escape to, just silence and truth. She smiled. I want to try. He smiled too. Then let us start there. 2 months later, spring rolled into Austin like a soft breath. The trees outside Avery's apartment were full of new green. The sunlight stretched longer each day, warm enough now to leave her jacket behind when walking home. Inside, on her kitchen table, sat a small wooden box. She opened it slowly. Inside were envelopes, all handwritten, some still sealed, others worn at the corners from being read more than once. They were from Grayson. No, not love letters. Not exactly. He had started writing them after their conversation in his office, one at a time, one per week. He never emailed them, never texted. He would leave them on her desk, or tuck them inside a book she had left in the break room. One was slipped beneath her coffee mug one morning. Each one was simple. A thought, a memory, sometimes a question, sometimes just one sentence. You looked happy today. I hope it was real. What scares you most when you are alone? I read your Q4 campaign pitch again. It is better than I first realized. Do you believe that two people can start over if neither of them knows how she kept every single one? Not because they were grand gestures, but because they were real. From him, words written slowly meant more than speeches. They were his version of showing up. And she showed up too. Not with letters, but with quiet moments, small touches, conversations on rooftops and in empty offices after hours. She did not need him to change. She just needed him to be present. And he was. They never announced anything. No labels, no official memo. Just them. A new rhythm. A new kind of closeness. People in the office noticed. Of course. Sarah once whispered during lunch. So when the wedding. Director Mitchell Avery had just smiled. Let us try movie night first. One Thursday evening, as the sun began to dip behind the skyline, Avery found a note waiting for her on her desk. This one was different, longer. He had signed it with his full name. She opened it carefully. Mitchell, I do not write these because I am good with words. I write them because I never knew how to say things when they mattered. I still do not know if I am getting it right. But I do know this. I used to believe work was the only way to matter, that progress came from plans, that leadership meant control. Then I met you. You did not ask for anything. You just saw me, and you stayed. No one ever stayed before the finish line. So this is not a goodbye. It is just a note, another one. Maybe my favorite. Thank you for changing the way I see silence, and for showing me that stillness does not have to mean empty. I am not asking for forever, but I would like to keep walking beside you. Even when the road curves. Grayson Wolfe Avery read the letter 3 times. She folded it once, carefully, and placed it into the wooden box with the others. Then she grabbed her bag. She knew where he would be. At the corner cafe 2 blocks down, the one with mismatched chairs and the humming espresso machine. He was sitting by the window, alone, a mug between his hands. She walked in, sat across from him, and said nothing, just smiled. He looked at her. His eyes asked the question. She nodded. I would like that too. Sometimes, the most meaningful connections begin in the most unexpected ways. This story reminds us that vulnerability is not weakness. It is the quiet strength to be seen. Even after years of protecting ourselves with silence, routine, or past pain, we can still choose to open the door. Avery and Grayson did not fall in love through grand gestures. They found each other through presence, through letters, through simple acts of care that built trust, one moment at a time. Life, especially as we grow older, often teaches us to guard our hearts, to stay safe, to stay silent. But what if healing begins when we stop waiting for the perfect time? What if it begins with a single conversation, a shared coffee, a choice to stay, when it feels easier to walk away? This is a reminder. It is never too late to choose connection. And sometimes, one quiet yes can change everything. Thank you for spending your time with this story. If it touched your heart, even just a little, we invite you to share it with someone who may need it too. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications. Every click helps us bring more stories of hope, healing, and quiet strength to life. We are grateful you are here.